I never thought I'd be the type of man to air my dirty laundry to the world. But after the legal battles and the sheer psychological warfare I went through, I feel like I owe it to anyone else walking around with their eyes closed. This is a real story from my life, a documentation of how the people I loved most tried to bury me, and how I clawed my way out of that grave to bury them instead. It started with a single stray receipt crumpled at the bottom of a trash can. I wasn't supposed to look in. It ended with me standing in the pouring rain outside a courthouse, watching my wife's life disintegrate while she screamed my name. I was holding the platinum Patek Philippe, watch she had supposedly lost months ago, the very object that proved she wasn't just cheating on me, but conspiring to steal every dime I had ever earned. In that moment, as the rain matted her hair to her face and the bailiffs held her back, I didn't feel love or pity. I felt the cold, hard satisfaction of a war finally won. To understand how I ended up in that rainstorm with a heart turned to stone, you have to understand the life I thought I was living. My name is David, and at 34, I was living the American dream. I had a sprawling, modern glass and steel home overlooking the Austin skyline. I was the founder of a specialized logistics software company called Vector. We weren't just a startup anymore. We were the industry standard, handling supply chains for half the Fortune 500. And beside me, or so I thought, was Alina. Alina was the kind of woman who walked into a room and changed the atmospheric pressure. She was stunning, sharp-tongued, and ambitious, an art dealer with an eye for modernism and a taste for the finer things. We'd been married for 6 years. I built that house for her. I built our life for her. I worked 80-hour weeks in the early days, sleeping under my desk, fueled by vending machine coffee and stale bagels. All so I could give her the security and luxury she said she needed. I worshipped the ground she walked on. I thought we were a power couple, a team. I thought, when she looked at me with those icy blue eyes, she saw a partner. I didn't realize she was just looking at a piggy bank she was waiting to smash open. The third player in this tragedy was Julian. Julian wasn't just my business partner. He was the brother I never had. We met in college, 2 scholarship kids with chips on our shoulders and coding skills that terrified our professors. While I was the architect of the software, Julian was the face. He was our CFO, the charmer who could sell ice to an Eskimo and make them thank him for it. He was the best man at my wedding. He even gave a toast about loyalty that made my mother cry. The betrayal didn't happen overnight. It was a slow erosion, a rust that set in beneath the paint. It began in the fall. Austin was cooling down, the humidity finally breaking, but the temperature inside my house seemed to be dropping even faster. Alina had become distant. It wasn't the usual busy with work distance. It was a specific kind of coldness. She stopped asking about my day. She stopped touching me when I passed her in the kitchen. She started locking her phone, a habit she'd never had before. "You're being paranoid, David," she would say, rolling her eyes when I asked why she was texting at 1 in the morning. "It's a client in London. The time zones are a nightmare. Why are you so insecure? It's unattractive." That was her weapon of choice, calling me insecure. She knew that as a man who had built himself up from nothing, my biggest fear was not being enough. She wielded that fear against me like a knife, twisting it a little deeper each time until I started to question my own sanity. But my gut was screaming that something was wrong, and it was a voice I could no longer ignore. If you enjoy our stories, please subscribe to the channel and tell us where you're from and what time it is right now. It's always fascinating to see how far our story flows. Now, let's get back to how that one receipt unraveled everything.
So whenever I questioned her odd hours, her missing weekends, or the sudden unexplained withdrawals from our joint household expenses account, she would flip the script. She would make me feel small, petty, and controlling. I'm trying to build my gallery's reputation. David, do you have any idea how much pressure I'm under? I don't need you breathing down my neck just because you're stressed about your merger. She was right about one thing. I was stressed. Vectorflow was in the middle of a massive acquisition deal. A tech giant was looking to buy us out for a sum that would set us up for life-generational wealth. Julian and I were in the final stages of due diligence. The auditors were crawling through our books. The lawyers were drafting contracts thick enough to stop a bullet, and the tension at the office was palpable. I was exhausted. I was fighting to secure our future at work and fighting to save my marriage at home. I felt like I was carrying the weight of the world on my shoulders, and my knees were starting to buckle. One Tuesday in November, I came home early. The acquisition meeting had been pushed back because the buyers wanted to review our Q3 liabilities again. I was drained, my head pounding with a migraine that had been lurking behind my eyes for 3 days. I parked my Audi in the driveway, noting that Elena's Range Rover was there. That was a surprise. Tuesday was usually her gallery curation day, where she spent hours in the city meeting with artists. I walked into the house, the silence heavy and thick. "Elena?" I called out, loosening my tie. No answer. I walked through the foyer, past the living room with its Italian leather sofas that cost more than my parents' first house. The place looked pristine, like a museum, cold, unlived in. I headed upstairs to the master bedroom. The door was slightly ajar. I pushed it open, expecting to find her napping or maybe in the bath. The room was empty. The bed was made, the pillows perfectly fluffed. I frowned. Her car was outside. Where was she? I turned to leave, but then I heard a noise coming from the walk-in closet. It was a muffled sound, like someone trying to suppress a laugh or a whisper. My stomach tightened. I walked toward the closet door, my footsteps silent on the plush carpet. I know. Elena's voice drifted through the wood, low and husky. He came home early last week, too. He's becoming such a nuisance. I froze. My hand hovered over the handle. "Don't worry," she continued. "He's too wrapped up in the deal to notice anything. He thinks I'm at the gallery. Look, did you talk to the lawyer? Is the trust fund setup complete?" A pause. "Good," she purred. "Because once that buyout money hits his account, I want to be ready to move. I can't spend another year pretending to listen to his boring stories about algorithms. It's exhausting, baby. I deserve a medal. My heart wasn't beating. It was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. Who was she talking to? And what did she mean about the buyout money? "I love you too," she said, her voice dripping with an affection she hadn't shown me in years. "I'll see you at the usual spot tomorrow. He thinks I have a Pilates retreat this weekend. God, he's so gullible, it's almost sad." She laughed. It was a cruel, dismissive sound that stripped away 6 years of marriage in a single second. I stepped back, my mind racing. I couldn't confront her now. If I burst in there, she'd deny it, gaslight me, claim she was talking to her sister or a friend. She was a master manipulator. If she was planning something involving the buyout money, I needed to know the full extent of it. I needed to know who she was talking to. I quietly backed out of the bedroom, went back downstairs, and slammed the front door loud enough to shake the frame, shouting, "Honey, I'm home." I waited at the bottom of the stairs, my hands trembling so hard I had to shove them into my pockets.
A minute later, Elena appeared at the top of the landing. She looked perfect. Her hair was smooth, her makeup flawless, and she was wearing that silk robe I bought her for our anniversary. "David," she said, her face a mask of innocent surprise, "you're early. I was just organizing my shoes." "Yeah, the meeting got canceled," I managed to say, my voice sounding surprisingly steady. She floated down the stairs and pecked me on the cheek. And then I smelled it. His cologne on her. It was faint, buried under her own perfume, but it was there. A musky, expensive scent. Familiar. "Poor baby," she said, patting my chest patronizingly. "Go lie down. I'll order takeout. I have a lot of paperwork to do tonight for the gallery. I just looked at her hand, saw a complete stranger, the predator. That night, I didn't sleep a wink. I lay there in bed next to her, listening to her steady breathing, while my entire world just collapsed in slow motion. I knew she was cheating. That was painful enough. But the comment about the trust fund and the lawyer and the buyout money absolutely terrified me. This wasn't just an affair. This was a full-blown heist. The next morning, I walked into my company, VectorFlow, with a new mission. I wasn't there to code. I was there to dig. I went straight to Julian's office. He was sitting behind his massive oak desk, typing furiously on his laptop. He looked up and flashed that million-dollar smile of his. "Davy, good morning, brother. You look like hell. Rough night." "Something like that," I muttered, dropping into the chair opposite him. "Just stress about the acquisition. The auditors are driving me crazy." Julian just chuckled, leaning back in his chair. "Tell me about it. They want receipts for paper clips from 2019. But hey, eyes on the prize. 2 weeks, and we're cashed out. 50 million each, David. Think about the freedom." I watched him closely. He was wearing a sharp navy suit, and then I smelled it. The cologne. It was the exact same scent I had smelled on Elena's neck. I felt the blood drain from my face. No, it couldn't be. Julian was my best friend. He was the one who helped me pick out Elena's engagement ring. He was supposed to be the godfather to our future children. "You okay?" Julian asked, his brow furrowing with concern. "You look pale. Just the migraine." I lied. "Actually, Julian, I need to access the server logs for the financial transfers from the last quarter. The auditors are asking for a specific metadata trail on the marketing budget. It was a technical request, something usually below my pay grade, but perfectly plausible for the lead engineer." Julian hesitated. It was just a micro-expression, a flicker of tension in his jaw that lasted less than a second, but I saw it. "Why don't I have my assistant pull that for you?" he offered smoothly. "You shouldn't be digging through raw logs. Save your brain for the architecture." "I need to verify the timestamps personally," I insisted, keeping my voice completely flat. "You know how obsessive I am." Sure, he said, forcing a smile. "I'll unlock the directory for you in an hour." He didn't unlock it in an hour. He stalled. He claimed the server was undergoing maintenance. He claimed he forgot. That afternoon, while Julian was out at a so-called lunch meeting, I used my master admin credentials access codes. Julian did know I still had to bypass all the front-end restrictions and dive directly into the company's private communication server. I wasn't looking for financial logs anymore. I was looking for messages. I ran a query for Julian's private corporate email and filtered for attachments. I found thousands of them, but then I saw a folder labeled Project Skyline. I opened it. Inside were dozens of PDF attachments, drafts of legal documents. I clicked on one titled DM Separation Agreement, DRAFT, DM David Miller, me. I started reading, and the room began to spin. It wasn't a separation agreement for the company. It was a divorce settlement draft, and what I read next would change everything. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe to find out what happens next. But the divorce papers were dated 3 months ago. Elena had been planning to divorce me for months. That wasn't even the worst part. I opened the next document, an email thread titled Asset Liquidation Strategy. It was between Julian and a lawyer I didn't recognize. Marcus, Julian had written, "We need to make sure the timing is perfect. Once the acquisition funds hit the VectorFlow account, I need you to trigger the mental incapacity clause in David's contract. Elena is working on the unstable part at home. She's got him thinking he's losing his mind. Once we freeze his assets, we funnel the funds into the offshore shell entity. By the time he gets a lawyer, the money will be in the Caymans, and he'll be destitute." I just sat there, staring at the screen, my breath catching in my throat. They weren't just having an affair. They were plotting to frame me as mentally unstable, kick me out of my own company at the very moment of its sale, and steal my entire $50 million payout. Elena's gaslighting ... ol. Those times she said, "You're paranoid, you're stressed, you're just insecure." It was all a calculated performance to build a history of instability. If I snapped, if I got angry, if I acted crazy, they would use it against me. They were going to take everything from me. My company, my money, my house ... and my sanity. And they were going to do it together. I looked out the glass wall of my office. I could see Julian walking back into the building, laughing on his cell phone. He looked so confident, so untouchable. I felt a single tear roll down my cheek, hot and angry. I wiped it away instantly. Sadness was a luxury I couldn't afford anymore. If they wanted a war, I'd give them one, but I wouldn't fight them with anger. I wouldn't give them the unstable outbursts they were practically begging for. I would be quiet, I would be patient, and I would be absolutely ruthless. I closed the file, wiped the access log so Julian wouldn't know I'd been there, and sat back in my chair. The game had changed. They thought they were playing chess with a pawn. They didn't realize they had just woken up the king. I knew I needed more than just emails. Emails could be explained away or challenged in court. I needed undeniable proof. I needed audio. I needed video. I needed to catch them in the very act of their conspiracy. I left the office early again that day. I drove to a spy shop on the outskirts of town, a place tucked between a pawn shop and a bail bondsman. I bought 3 voice-activated micro-recorders, a GPS tracker, and a pinhole camera disguised as a smoke detector. I drove home, my hands gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. Alina called me when I was 5 minutes away. "David, where are you? You're late for dinner," she said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "Sorry, honey," I said, channeling every ounce of self-control I possessed. "Traffic is a nightmare. I'm just turning onto our street now. I can't wait to see you." "I can't wait either," she cooed. I hung up. The lie tasted like ash in my mouth. I pulled into the driveway, deactivated the garage door opener so it wouldn't make noise, and crept into the house. I knew she'd be in the kitchen or living room, so I went straight to our master bedroom. I needed to plant the first bug. I taped one of the recorders under the nightstand. I hid another one behind the headboard. Then, I went into the walk-in closet. I was about to hide the 3rd recorder in her jewelry box when I saw it. Sitting on her vanity, right next to her makeup brushes, was a receipt. She must have pulled it out of her purse and forgotten to throw it away. It was from a high-end jewelry store, Cartier. I picked it up. It was for a men's watch, a vintage tank watch. The price was $12,000. The date, yesterday. Alina didn't have $12,000 of her own money to spend. The puzzle pieces were falling into place, and the picture they were forming was horrifying. She used my supplementary card for everything. But I hadn't seen a charge alert. I looked closer at the payment method. Cash. $12,000 in cash. Where did she get that kind of cash? And then it hit me. The emergency safe in my home office. I kept about $20,000 in cash there for emergencies, hurricanes, grid failures, quick exits, anything. I ran to my office down the hall, my heart pounding in my chest. I spun the dial on the wall safe, hidden behind the painting. Empty, she had raided my emergency fund, my safety net. All of it gone, to buy her lover a 5-figure watch. I stood there in the dim light of the office, the empty safe gaping at me like a mocking mouth. The disrespect was visceral. It wasn't just the theft. It was the sheer audacity. She used my money, the money I had set aside to protect us, to buy a lavish gift for the man she was betraying me with. Just then, I heard the front door open downstairs. She must have gone out to the mailbox. "David, are you upstairs?" Her voice called out, laced with a sweetness that now sounded like poison. "Just changing," I yelled back, my voice strained. I quickly closed the safe and hung the painting back up, my hands trembling. I slipped the receipt into my pocket. This was the first piece of physical evidence I had. But it wasn't enough. Not nearly enough. I went downstairs, plastering a smile on my face that felt like a mask. Alina was in the kitchen, casually opening a bottle of wine. Not just any wine, a bottle of my 1998 vintage Cabernet. A bottle I had been saving. "There you are," she smiled, handing me a glass. "I thought we could celebrate tonight." "Celebrate what?" I asked, taking the glass. Every instinct screamed at me to throw it against the wall, to shatter the charade. "Oh, just us," she said, her eyes meeting mine as she clinked her glass against mine. "And the acquisition coming up, we're going to be so happy, David. I can just feel it." I looked into her eyes, searching for any flicker of guilt, any hint of remorse. There was nothing. They were bright, clear, and completely devoid of a conscience. "To us," I said, raising my glass and taking a sip. The wine tasted like ash in my mouth. In that moment, I knew exactly what I had to do. I had to become the best actor of my life. For the next 2 weeks, I would play the role of the clueless, devoted husband. I had to let them think they were winning. I had to let them get so close to the finish line that they could taste the money, feel the victory in their grasp. And then, right when they reached out to take it, I was going to cut off their hands. Metaphorically, of course. But first, I needed to find out their full plan. I had to understand how they planned to trigger the mental instability clause in our company's bylaws. I needed to hear the specifics, straight from their own mouths. My opportunity came just 2 days later. I told Alina I had to go on an overnight business trip to Dallas. A crucial last-minute meeting. She bought it without a second thought. Her feigned disappointment almost convincing. But I didn't go to Dallas. I drove my car to the airport, parked it in the long-term lot, and then took an Uber back to my own neighborhood. I got out a few blocks away and hiked through the woods that bordered the back of our property. There I was, sitting in the cold, damp foliage of my own backyard, like a spy in some low-budget movie. I watched my own house through a pair of high-powered binoculars, waiting for Julian's car to pull into my driveway. It didn't take long. At exactly 7 p.m., the distinct roar of Julian's Porsche echoed through the quiet evening. He pulled right up. He didn't even bother to knock. He used a key. My key. I watched them through the large living room window. They were laughing. They were kissing. And he was wearing the watch. My watch, the one bought with my emergency money. The sight of it on his wrist sent a fresh wave of cold fury through me. I pulled out my phone and activated the remote listening app. It connected to the high-fidelity bugs I had planted earlier that day, hidden discreetly inside the living room lamps. A bit of paranoia-fueled online shopping had paid off. I put in my earbuds, and their voices flooded my head, crystal clear against the backdrop of the crickets chirping around me in the darkness. "He's gone for a full 24 hours, Alina said, her voice dripping with relief. "God, I needed this. He's been so clingy lately, it's suffocating." "Patience, babe," Julian's smooth voice replied. "We're just 10 days out. It's almost over." "Did you switch his medication?" "I froze medication. I took a daily multivitamin and an occasional allergy pill when the pollen was bad." "What medication were they talking about?" "Yes," Alina said, her voice casual, as if she were discussing the grocery list. "I swapped his allergy pills with the high-dose stimulants I got from my brother. If he takes them for a solid week, he's going to be jittery, paranoid, and completely erratic. He'll look like he's having a total breakdown in front of the board." My blood ran cold. It felt like ice water was being pumped directly into my veins. This wasn't just gaslighting. This wasn't just a plot to steal my company. They were actively drugging me to orchestrate my downfall. Perfect, Julian laughed. Perfect, Julian laughed, a chilling, triumphant sound. "I've already planted the seed with the investors. I've been telling them that David is cracking under the pressure of the deal. When he walks into that final signing meeting, shaking and sweating and looking like a lunatic, they'll demand he step down. I'll invoke the incapacity clause, take control of the voting shares, and sign the deal myself. And then we're free." I sat there in the dirt, hidden by the trees, the voices of my wife and her lover detailing my demise in my ears. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. The betrayal was so much deeper, so much more sinister than I could have ever imagined. They weren't just after my money. They were trying to destroy me, to dismantle my sanity, my reputation, my entire life. My anger, which had been a hot, burning fire, now turned into something cold, sharp, and precise. This was no longer just about revenge. This was about survival. I took a deep, steadying breath. The game had changed, and I was going to make damn sure I was the one who won. We get the payout, he gets a nice stay in a facility, and we're on a plane to the Maldives. I sat there in the dirt, darkness closing in. The betrayal was total. Physical, financial, emotional, and medical. I pulled the earbuds out. I didn't need to hear anymore. I looked at the house, my home. It was filled with a warm, golden light, masking the rot inside. I stood up, brushing the dirt off my jeans. The old David, the one who loved Alina, the one who trusted Julian, died in those woods that night. The man who walked back to the road to call a cab was someone else entirely. I had 10 days to reverse engineer their trap. 10 days to save my company, and 10 days to prepare a punishment so severe they would regret the day they ever learned my name. The storm was coming, but they were the ones who were going to drown. I spent that night in a cheap motel near the airport, staring at the popcorn ceiling and listening to the recording over and over. "Did you switch his medication?" "Yes. I swapped his allergy pills with the high-dose stimulants, double quotes, every time I heard Elena's voice. A fresh wave of nausea hit me. It wasn't just betrayal, it was assault. They were actively trying to destroy my biochemistry to steal my life's work. A cold rage settled in my chest, heavier and denser than anything I had ever felt. It wasn't the fiery anger that makes you scream. It was the glacial anger that makes you calculate. The next morning, I returned home, pretending I was back from Dallas, acting exhausted but normal. I went straight to the medicine cabinet in our master bathroom. I found my bottle of allergy relief. The pills looked identical white, round, innocuous. I palmed one and slipped it into a small plastic baggie in my pocket. Later that day, I dropped it off at a private lab I used for chemical testing in our hardware development. I paid for a rush analysis. 4 hours later, the results came back. Amphetamine salts. High concentration. If I had taken these daily for a week, I wouldn't just be jittery. I'd be manic. My heart rate would be through the roof, my pupils dilated, my speech rapid and disjointed. I would look exactly like a man in the midst of a psychotic break. Their plan was diabolical. So I replaced their poison with actual allergy pills I'd bought on the way home. I wasn't going to take their poison, but I needed them to think I was. That afternoon, I started my performance. I walked into the kitchen while Alina was making tea. I made sure my hands were trembling slightly. I tapped my foot incessantly against the floor. "Hey," I said, speaking a little too fast. "Did you see my keys? I swear I left them here. I can't find anything in this house anymore." "It's like things are moving." Alina turned, hiding a smirk behind her teacup. "They're on the hook, David, right where they always are. Are you okay? You seem ... wired." "I'm fine," I snapped, a little too aggressively. "Just busy, so much to do. The code is messy. Julian keeps asking for things. Maybe you should rest," she soothed, walking over to rub my shoulders. "You're burning the candle at both ends. I can't rest." I pulled away, pacing the room. "Not until the deal is done." I saw the look of satisfaction in her eyes. She thought the drugs were working. She texted someone 5 minutes later. I didn't need to see the screen to know it was Julian. It's happening, but it wasn't their plan that was happening. It was mine. Phase 1 of my counterattack was securing the money. Julian's plan relied on the incapacity clause in our operating agreement. If the CEO, me, was deemed unfit by a medical professional or a board vote, the CFO, him, took temporary control of all assets. I needed to strip him of that power before their fake mental health crisis meeting. I called my personal attorney, a shark named Rebecca, who had been with me since the garage days. It was time to go on the offensive.
I played her the recording of Julian and Elena plotting the medication swap. Rebecca, usually stone-faced, looked like she was about to vomit. "No," I said, cutting her off. "Not yet. If we go to the police now, they get arrested, sure. But the acquisition deal collapses. So what do you want to do?" Rebecca asked, eyeing me warily. "I want the deal to go through," I said. "I want the money in the account." I slid a folder across the table. "I need you to draft a secret amendment to the operating agreement. I have 60% of the voting shares. I want to create a new corporate account that only I can access. The moment the wire transfer from the buyers hits our main account, I want an auto-sweep setup to transfer every cent into the new secure account." "That's aggressive," Rebecca said, pulling a pen from her purse. "But legal, given your majority stake. What about Julian?" "Draft a termination letter," I said. "For cause. Embezzlement, corporate espionage, and conspiracy. Dated for the day of the signing. And Elena." I looked out the window at the gray parking lot. "I'll handle Elena." The next 3 days were a blur of acting and espionage. I continued to play the unhinged husband at home and the erratic CEO at work. I sent emails to the staff at 3 a.m. with gibberish subject lines. I yelled at a junior developer for a minor bug, then apologized profusely 5 minutes later with tears in my eyes. Julian was loving it. Every time I acted crazy, he would pat my back, look concerned for the cameras, and then smirk when I turned away. "Take a half day, Dave," he told me on Thursday. "You're scaring the interns. I've got this. I'm not scaring anyone." I shouted, knocking a stack of papers off my desk. "You're trying to push me out." He held up his hands in mock surrender. "Nobody is pushing you out, brother. We're a team. Just go home. Relax." I stormed out, knowing he would immediately call the investors and tell them I was deteriorating fast. But while I was relaxing at home, I was actually digging into Elena's finances. I used the family computer, accessed her cloud backup, and found a hidden folder of bank statements. She had opened a credit card in my name 3 years ago, maxed it out. Last month, she had sent $50,000 to a real estate developer in Costa Rica. A deposit on a villa. The deed was in 2 names, Elena Miller and Julian Ross. There it was, the escape plan. They weren't just going to leave me broke. They were going to retire to a tropical paradise on my dime. I printed everything. The bank statements, the deed, the credit card fraud records. I compiled a dossier thick enough to choke a horse, but I needed one final nail in the coffin. I needed to catch them together in a compromised position on the day of the signing. I needed to shatter their confidence right before I shattered their lives. The signing was scheduled for Monday morning at 10 a.m. at our downtown office. On Sunday, I told Elena I was going to the office to check the servers one last time. I told her I was feeling lucid and wanted to make sure everything was perfect. "Are you sure that's a good idea?" she asked, her eyes narrowing. "Maybe you should stay here." "Take your ... medicine." "I took it," I lied. "I feel great." Really focused.
I drove to the office, but I didn't go in. I parked down the street and just watched. Sure enough, 20 minutes later, Elena's Range Rover pulled into the executive lot. She wasn't authorized to be there. She didn't have a key card. Unless, of course, Julian let her in. I watched the building's security feed on my tablet. I still had master access. And there they were in the conference room, the big glass-walled room where the signing was supposed to happen tomorrow. They were celebrating early. Julian had a bottle of champagne open. Alina was sitting on the edge of the conference table, her legs crossed, laughing as Julian poured her a glass. I zoomed in on the camera feed. To David, Julian toasted, raising his glass with a sneer. The goose that laid the golden egg and then kindly died so we could eat it. Alina clinked her glass against his, to the incapacity clause, and to Costa Rica. Then they kissed. Long and deep, right there on the table where I had spent 5 years building my company. I recorded the entire stream. I had everything: the poison analysis, the audio of their plot, the financial fraud documents, the video of the affair, and I had the trap set for the money. I was ready. I went home that night and played the role of the doomed man one last time. I sat on the couch, staring blankly at the TV, letting a little drool escape the corner of my mouth. When Alina came in, she looked at me with pure disgust and just shook her head. "You're pathetic," she whispered, thinking I was too far gone to hear her. "I love you, Alina," I mumbled, slurring my words. She didn't even answer. She just turned off the lights and went upstairs to pack her bags. She thought she was packing for a victory lap. She had no idea she was packing for prison. But Monday morning dawned with a heavy, grey sky. Thunder rumbled in the distance. It was fitting. I dressed slowly, but I didn't put on my usual hoodie and jeans. I put on my best Suter charcoal three-piece, custom-tailored in Italy. I shaved, I combed my hair. I looked sharp, dangerous. When I walked into the kitchen, Alina dropped her coffee mug. It shattered on the floor. "David," she stammered. "You look ... different." "I feel better," I said, my voice steady and cold. "Much better. The fog has lifted. But did you take your pill?" she asked. "Oh yes," I said. "I took everything that was coming to me." She looked uneasy and immediately started texting Julian. I drove to the office. The parking lot was full. Investors, lawyers, auditors, everyone was there. I walked into the building. The receptionist looked surprised to see me looking so composed. "Good morning, Mr. Miller. Everyone is in the conference room." "Thank you, Sarah," I said. "Call security. Tell them to wait outside the conference room doors. But I might need them to escort some trespassers off the property." "Trespassers, sir?" "Yes," I said, adjusting my cuffs. "Just have them ready." I walked down the long hallway toward the glass doors. I could see them inside. Julian was at the head of the table, charming the investors. He looked up as I approached, and his smile faltered for just a fraction of a second before he recovered. He was expecting a manic, sweating, shaking mess. Instead, he got the CEO. I pushed the doors open and stepped into the cool, air-conditioned silence. "Good morning, everyone," I said, my voice projecting clearly across the room. "Sorry I'm late. I had to take out the trash." Julian stood up, a nervous laugh bubbling out of him. "David, you made it. We were just discussing the transition protocols. Given your health..." "My health is excellent, Julian," I said, walking to the head of the table. "In fact, I've never been clearer." I placed my briefcase on the table. "The sound was like a gunshot, actually," I said, turning to the lead investor, a man named Sterling. "Before we sign the acquisition, there is a small internal matter regarding personnel that I need to address. It affects the liability of the company."
"Personnel matter?" Sterling asked, looking confused. "Can't this wait?" "No," I said, my voice firm. "It involves the CFO." I glanced at Julian. He was pale, a bead of sweat tracing a path down his temple. He knew something was terribly, terribly wrong. "David, what are you doing?" he hissed, his voice a desperate whisper. "Don't make a scene. You're not well." "Sit down, Julian," I commanded, my tone leaving no room for argument. I opened my briefcase and pulled out a single blue folder, placing it deliberately on the polished table. "I am hereby exercising my authority as majority shareholder to terminate Julian Ross, effective immediately for cause," I announced. The room erupted in a wave of murmurs and shocked gasps. "You can't do that," Julian shouted, his face flushing a deep, angry red. He pointed a trembling finger at me. "He's unstable. He's having a breakdown. Look at him." "I'm afraid not," I said calmly, meeting his panicked gaze without flinching. But since you brought up stability, I picked up the remote for the conference room screen. I think you all should see why VectorFlow is under new management. I pressed play. The video from Sunday night flickered to life on the giant 80-inch screen. There they were, Julian and Elena, on my dining room table. The toast to David. Julian's voice boomed through the speakers. The goose that laid the golden egg and then kindly died so we could eat it. The silence in the room was absolute, a vacuum that sucked all the air out. Julian froze, looking like a ghost caught in the headlights. Then the audio changed, shifting to the recording from the woods. "Did you switch his medication?" Elena's voice asked, laced with a casual cruelty. Julian's reply was chillingly clear. "I swapped his allergy pills with the high-dose stimulants, The investors gasped. Sterling shot to his feet, his face a mask of horror as he looked from the screen to Julian and back again. This is criminal," Sterling whispered, his voice barely audible. I paused the video. All eyes turned to me, then to Julian. "Julian Ross," I said, my voice ringing with finality, "you are fired. You are stripped of your equity due to the bad actor clause in our partnership agreement and ... I pointed to the conference room door, where 2 uniformed police officers, who Rebecca had called on my signal, were waiting. "I believe these gentlemen would like a word with you about attempted poisoning and conspiracy to commit grand larceny." Julian stared at the door, then at me, his arrogance finally shattered, replaced by the terrified look of a rat caught in a trap. "David," he stammered, his voice breaking. "David, wait! It was a joke! We were just... It's out of context." "Save it for the judge," I said, my voice cold as ice. As the officers moved in to handcuff him, I pulled out my phone. "Oh, and Julian," I said. He looked up, tears streaming down his flushed face. "I moved the money," I said softly. "The acquisition goes through, but you don't get a dime." They dragged him out, screaming and protesting, but his words were just noise. I wasn't done. The deal was signed within the hour. Sterling and his team were horrified, but they were pragmatists. The tech was sound, the company was profitable, and the bad apple had been decisively removed. My swift action actually reassured them. It showed I was a leader who would cut out the cancer to save the host. By noon, the wire transfer hit the corporate account. 5 minutes later, my automated sweep kicked in, moving $52 million into the new, secure holding company I'd established. I was rich, I was successful, and I was completely, utterly alone. I sat in my office, the silence ringing in my ears. Across the hall, Julian's office was already being taped off by the police. The staff were in shock, whispering in clusters. I sent a company-wide email. "Julian terminated for gross misconduct. Operations continue as normal." Then I got in my car and drove home. A storm had finally broken. Rain lashed against the windshield, turning the world into a gray blur. It was the kind of rain that promises to wash everything clean. I pulled into the driveway. Elena's car was still there. She was waiting for the good news call, probably already browsing flights to Costa Rica. I walked to the front door, not bothering to run. I let the rain soak my suit, wanting to feel something, anything. I unlocked the door and stepped into the foyer. Now it was her turn. "David, is that you? Why are you home so early? Did something happen?" "Something happened. Did you sign? Did the money come through?" "Yes, the money is safe." "Oh, thank God. I knew you could do it, baby. We're free. We need to celebrate. I'll open the champagne. We should go out to dinner, anywhere you want. The steakhouse." "We're not going to dinner, Elena. What's wrong? You're scaring me. Sit down." "David," I sit down. "What is this? That is your retirement plan, or it was?" "David, I can explain. This is... Julian made me." Do not insult my intelligence. I know everything, Elena. I know about the affair. I know about the watch. I know about the Costa Rica villa. And I know about the pills. You, ... you know. I have the recording. You and Julian. Discussing how to make me look crazy. How to poison me with amphetamines. How to steal my company. David, please. He forced me. I was scared of him. He said he would hurt you if I didn't go along with it. Liar. I heard you laughing, Elena. I heard you mocking me. He's so clingy, it's suffocating. Remember, Julian is in police custody. They arrested him at the office an hour ago. Attempted poisoning, conspiracy, fraud, Am I going to jail? That depends on what? On how fast you can get out of my house. What? I'm giving you 10 minutes. Pack a bag, whatever you can carry, and get out. But where will I go? I don't care. Go to your sister's. Go to a hotel. Go to hell. Just get out of my sight. But the house? Our assets. The house is in my name, purchased before the marriage. The prenup you signed, remember that? The one you said was unromantic, but signed anyway. It explicitly states that any assets acquired through criminal activity or fraud are forfeited. Attempted murder via poisoning voids your claim to alimony. Murder, poisoning a spouse, is attempted murder in the state of Texas. If I press charges, you go to prison for 20 years. If you leave right now, sign the divorce papers I send you. And never ask for a penny. I might forget to hand the recording of your voice to the district attorney. She didn't argue. She scrambled up the stairs, a panicked animal desperate to escape. I heard drawers opening and closing, the sound of her frantic packing echoing through the silent house. It was a symphony of my liberation. I walked into the living room and sank onto the sofa. The room felt bigger, lighter. The air tasted cleaner. The weight that had been crushing my chest for months was gone. I felt hollow, but it was a clean hollow, a space ready to be filled with something new, something real. Exton meal. 10 minutes later, she was back downstairs, dragging a single suitcase. Her face was streaked with cheap tears, her mascara running. The angelic mask was gone, revealing the grasping, selfish woman underneath. She paused at the door, looking back at me, a final, desperate plea in her eyes. David, I didn't answer. I just looked at her, my face a blank canvas. There was nothing left to say. She let out a final, shuddering sob and pulled the door open. The click of the lock behind her was the sweetest sound I had ever heard. It was the sound of freedom. It was the sound of a new beginning. My new beginning. She scrambled up the stairs, sobbing hysterically. I could hear drawers being ripped open, hangers clattering against each other. 10 minutes later, she came down, dragging a single Louis Vuitton suitcase. She looked like a wreck. Her mascara was running down her face. Her hair was a complete mess. David, please, she whimpered at the door. I love you. We can fix this. I was confused. I opened the front door. The rain was coming down harder now, a torrential downpour that matched the storm inside me. Get out, I said, my voice cold and steady. She stepped out onto the porch. She looked back one last time, searching my face for any shred of the man who used to adore her. But she found only a stranger. Goodbye, Alina. I slammed the door right in her face and locked the deadbolt. I walked to the window and watched her drag that expensive suitcase to her Range Rover. She sat in the driver's seat for a long time, just crying, before she finally started the engine and backed out of the driveway. I watched her taillights disappear into the rain. I was finally alone in that big, empty house. I walked to the kitchen, poured the rest of the expensive wine she loved down the sink, and opened a beer. Then I just sat on the floor of the living room, listening to the rain hammer against the roof. I felt light. The weight was gone. The lies were gone. The poison was gone. I pulled out my phone. I had one more call to make. Rebecca, I asked. David? Her voice was sharp. Where are you? The police are here asking about Alina. They want to know if she was a co-conspirator. She's gone, I said flatly. I kicked her out. David, you can't just let her go. She committed a crime. I know, I said. I told her I might not press charges if she leaves. But Rebecca, yes. Send the full evidence file to the DA. The recording, the bank fraud, everything. You want her arrested? She asked, a hint of surprise in her voice. I want justice, I said. She tried to destroy my mind. She tried to take everything from me. She doesn't get a pass just because I used to love her. Understood, Rebecca said. I'll forward the file now. They'll pick her up within the hour. I hung up. I didn't feel guilty. I felt clean. 6 months later, the divorce was finalized in record time. Alina was serving a 5-year sentence for conspiracy to commit fraud and reckless endangerment. Julian, the mastermind behind it all, got 12 years. The judge didn't take kindly to the poisoning aspect. I sold the house. I couldn't live there anymore. Too many ghosts haunted those halls. I bought a smaller place, a cabin up in the hill country with a view of the lake. It was quiet, peaceful. My company, Vectorflow, was thriving under its new parent company. I stayed on as a consultant, working just 20 hours a week for an obscene salary. I spent the rest of my time hiking, fishing, and slowly rebuilding myself. I was sitting on my deck one evening, watching the sun set over the water, when my phone buzzed. It was an email from the prison notification system. Inmate update. Alina Miller has been denied parole. I deleted the email without even opening it. I took a sip of my coffee and looked out at the horizon. The sky was a brilliant mix of orange and purple. It was beautiful. I thought about the man I used to be, the workaholic, the pleaser, the man who measured his own worth by his wife's approval. That man was gone. In his place was someone harder, yes, but also someone freer. I had walked through fire and come out the other side. I had scars, invisible ones that would probably never fully heal. I trusted less, I watched more, but I was alive, I was sane, and I was free. Sometimes, the only way to find out who you really are is to lose everything you thought you needed. And sometimes, the best revenge isn't screaming or fighting. It's simply surviving, thriving, and closing the door on the people who tried to burn you down. The storm was over. And for the first time in a long, long time, the silence wasn't empty. It was peaceful. Thanks for listening.